The basic platformer game engine comes with one Spriter-made boss character. You can add this boss to any level via the following steps. Make sure there is one boss mask sprite in the level layout where you'd like the boss to be. Make sure there is also one boss Spriter SCML object in the same general spot in the layout. Make sure that layout is set to have the event sheet boss events as its event sheet instead of level events. That's it. Now when the player plays this level and approaches the boss, it will activate the boss intro sequence and the boss battle will commence. We're not quite done yet, however. Where most levels need an exit level sprite at the end for the player to overlap to trigger the victory over the level, boss levels are only defeated when the player defeats the boss. For this reason, be sure to delete the exit level sprite in any layout you add a boss to. You then have to edit a value in the actual boss Spriter file so that the game knows what level is defeated when the boss dies. Here's how. Load the boss.scml file found in the boss 35% folder into Spriter Pro. Select the die animation, scroll down in the timelines and double-click the metadata keyframe node at 0 in the timeline to bring up the metadata editor window. The two variables you'll want to edit are next layout, which you want to set to the number of the level after the one the boss is in, and land, which should be set to the number of the animation frame image that should be displayed for the save slot of this boss level if this boss level is the furthest most defeated level in the save game slot. Please watch the tutorial video for customizing the save game slot screen to understand this better. Now that you've made your edits, you need to export this boss to the format needed by the game engine. Choose File, Other File Actions, Custom Save Options, and then make sure all of these options are checked on. Choose File, Generate Sprite Sheet for Project Images, make sure Save as Scan and Save Sprite Sheeted Project are checked on, and click the small button with 3 dots to choose the base file name. Choose the Boss Atlas folder and type BOSS for the base file name. Click Save and then click OK. Now go to that Boss Atlas folder and you'll see that the Boss Spriter project has been exported to several files in the format we need. Go back into Construct and go to the layout called Spriter. Double-click the boss.scml object and load in the new image from the Boss Atlas folder. Now under Files, find and delete the boss.scon file from the project and then import the new one to take its place by right-clicking the Spriter Animations folder and selecting Import Files, and then choosing the new boss.scon file from the Boss Atlas folder. There, now your boss is updated, and when the player beats it, the level will properly register as being defeated and the player will be sent to the following level. Of course, you may want your game to include many different bosses. Luckily, you can copy the entire boss 35% folder and then edit or replace the images and animations to create as many unique additional bosses as possible. But then, of course, you'll need to import each separate boss as its own Spriter object in Construct and set up a few things to make sure they'll all function properly. We'll explain more at the end of the video. If you want your new boss to be a different size than the default boss, you can use Spriter Pro's Save as Resized Palette Swapped Project feature to create your new boss Spriter project scaled down or up to any size you'd like. Once it's the desired size, customize the body part images as you see fit by editing them in the graphics program of your choice. You can customize the timing and appearance of each animation and its keyframes, as well as change the size, shape, and position of any of the collision rectangles to not just change how the boss looks, but to affect gameplay as well. These are still only the most superficial aspects of the boss that you can change. Let's go to the idle animation and look at the metadata. You'll see there are a large array of variables built into the boss. Each controls a different aspect of the actual behavior of the boss in the game. Next Anim lets you type in which animation the boss should automatically play immediately after this animation finishes. You'll see that for idle, the next Anim variable is set to be active in the keyframe but has no value. This is so that the boss is not forced to a single specific animation once idle finishes playing. Instead, it will pick from a few different possible animations at random. The next 5 values, called RND1 through 5, are 5 possible randomly selected animations to choose from and switch to, Every half second, the game engine generates a random number from 1 to 5, and if the R&D value corresponding to that randomly generated number is set to a valid animation name, then the boss will switch to that animation. You can leave some of these R&D values blank to increase the likelihood the boss will continue in its current animation longer. You can double up on the same animation name in multiple R&D values to increase the odds it will switch to that particular animation. Quake level is used to set the severity of a screen shake that the boss can trigger. The default value is 12, and it's unlikely you'd want a stronger value. Let's quickly look at the intro animation, and you can see we set a trigger called Quake roughly midway through the timeline, exactly when the boss lands on the ground. This is how you trigger a screen shake in the game. Just click or scrub on the spot in the timeline you'd like the screen shake to occur, and right-click anywhere in the left-hand column of the timeline palette and choose Append Event Trigger at Time, and then type Quake. Player Intro is where you set the name of the animation the player Spriter object will play while the boss is playing its intro animation. By default there is only one, but you can add as many custom boss intro animations to the player Spriter file as you'd like. Face Player should always be set to either yes or no, and tells the boss if it should automatically and instantly flip left or right to face the player. This way you can have the boss stuck facing a specific direction during specific animations or segments of specific animations. Land lets you set what image should be displayed by the player's save game slot icon if the player manages to beat this boss. The value should be a number corresponding to one of the animation frames of the save slot icon sprite in the slot select layout. New Music lets you set the name of a new music track to play if it is triggered. If you look back in the intro animation, you'll see that a trigger called Music Change is set very early in the timeline. This will make the boss fight song start playing when the boss makes its introduction. Top Vulnerable has a default value of yes. This means the boss can be hurt if the player jumps on its head. If you turn this off by changing the default value to no, the player will not be able to hurt the boss by bouncing off of his head and would likely be hurt himself instead. Bounce Damage lets you set how badly the boss will be hurt if the player does bounce on its head. Jump Strength lets you set how high the boss can jump. To make the boss jump, you just add a trigger to the timeline of any animation called Jump. Shoot Flame lets you tell the boss to start spraying flame out of its action point called point_000. For the boss to shoot flames, you must do two things. 1. Make sure the animation includes point_000, and 2. Set the shoot flame value to 1. Be sure to set shoot flame back to 0 as soon as you want the boss to stop shooting fire. Box Width and Box Height let you set the pixel dimensions of the actual boss mask sprite, which the boss Spriter animations are automatically pinned to, and which actually controls the platformer movement and collision detection between the boss's body and the player. You can go to the layout in Construct that the boss is intended for and temporarily set the boss mask sprite to Visible to check your settings to see if they are set well. And finally, X Velocity lets you control the horizontal movement speed of the boss at any time. Just set the value to 0 when you don't want the boss moving at all, and to a negative number when you want the boss to move. If for some reason you want the boss to be moving backwards, you can set X Velocity to a positive number. We know this is the most complicated tutorial, and the boss is the most complicated aspect of the game engine. We suggest you re-watch this video a few times and experiment with the values and triggers until you gain mastery over all of the options it offers. Once you have new boss variations you want to add as unique bosses for specific levels in your game, follow these steps. For Construct 2 users, because we need the import process to create collision sprites, we'll actually be importing the non-sprite-sheeted version of the boss project. And for that we'll choose File, Other File Actions, Custom Save Options in Spriter's menu, and make sure all of the custom save options are checked on, and save the boss back out in both SCML and SCON format with the same exact name, making sure your new boss does not share the same name as any other boss Spriter object. Then drag the resulting .scon file directly into the Spriter layout in C2. Choose the Spriter Events event sheet and then click OK. Once C2 finishes the import process, edit the All Spriter and the Spriter Bosses families to include this new boss sprite. Edit the Boss Attack Boxes family to include the new Bosses Attack Box sprites. Edit the Boss Hurdy Boxes family to include the new Bosses Body Box and Critical Box sprites. And finally, edit the Boss Trigger Boxes family to include the new Boss's Trigger Box sprite. If this new boss uses any new sounds, you'll also have to manually import those sound files as well. For Construct 3 users, Construct 3's improved plugin options make this process more automated. And if we import the more optimized sprite-sheeted version of our bosses, the import process will automatically create any needed collision sprites and import any sounds as well. So first, let's create a new folder for the sprite-sheeted version of our new boss and then choose File, Generate Sprite Sheet for Project Images. Make sure Save as Scan and Save Sprite-sheeted Project are checked on, and click the small button with 3 dots to choose the base file name. Choose the folder you just made, type your new boss's name for the base file name, click Save, and then click OK. Go inside the target folder and you'll find all the files the export process generated, including a subfolder with sounds if your boss uses any sound files. Select all the files and combine them into a zip file. Now go to the Spriter layout in Construct 3 and drag the zip file you just made into the layout canvas. Once the import process is done, edit the All Spriter and the Spriter Bosses families to include this new Boss Spriter object. Edit the Boss Attack Boxes family to include the new Boss's Attack Box sprites. Edit the Boss Hurdy Boxes family to include the new Boss's Body Box and Critical Box sprites. And finally, edit the Boss Trigger Boxes family to include the new Boss's Trigger Box sprite. Now if you add this new Boss SCML object and a Boss Mask sprite to any layout and make that layout use the Boss Events event sheet, the new boss should be there to challenge the player. Just be sure to have properly set the next layout and lands variables in the Spriter project and to remove the exit level sprite from the layout containing the boss. Thanks for watching.